tired. We are not going to be tired of sitting all day and feeling the vibration of the car and the roads. We are not going to mind it if the place that we stay stinks of cigarettes and the beds are rotten, so forth and so on. I mean, we prepare ourselves, and we really do it seriously. And when we do it seriously, then the day isn't as bad. It isn't as long, it isn't as tiring, and the experience isn't as unpleasant as it would be if we hadn't prepared before striking out. I'd say that could apply to almost everything that all of you do, where you find any hyperactivity or any confusion or frustration coming in. I know that some of your out-of-craft tasks would definitely require some mental preparation before you arrive there, or you just open the door to nervous frustration. Like some of you talk about how you don't get your task done at your task. And you've got it doesn't matter. It simply doesn't matter. Your task is to learn how, if and how much you can improve your proficiency and get it to the level of maximum proficiency without frustration or nervous disorder. And when you have performed that way, then that's all that you can do, period. And you just don't, when that day is over, that day is over. That's the end of it. And you don't want to carry that frustration home. You don't even want to let it frustrate you, even if you don't get the task all accomplished. You've simply done what you could of that task in the time that was given to you. While we're talking about this, another little aspect that we thought about, we've talked about this before to some degree, but I know that it came into some of your minds on your buying spree. And that was your vehicle, or the mind of the vehicle, began to think in terms of economics. Now, it's true that we have asked you to think about certain aspects of economics. To us, it always is fun if you can get something for a lot less than the retail price on it. That makes it fun. But you aren't to think of economics as far as not spending what has been allotted to you. If we didn't want you to spend what was allotted to you, we wouldn't have allotted it to you. And you've got to, and that carries on into everything. You should never be concerned about the choices that are given to links on how we would spend money on things that we are instructed to possess, or to and if your vehicle questions them, you quickly get rid of it, and you say, what should I care? What should my vehicle care for? For heaven's sakes, it's none of your business. They're doing exactly what they're told to do about it, and they're doing it for our sakes and for the sake of the task. So why would the question of my vehicle enter in? And this goes not only in economics, but it goes into decisions made. Because a lot of times you can question, if you let your vehicle question, you can question about whether or not the decision that was made by members of your craft or SAT3 or links, if those trying to reason out whether or not that was a wise decision or not. And it doesn't enter the picture, even more than whether it was an economical situation. Now, if you are put in the position of being the spender or being the decider, then you've got to be sure where the instructions come from and that you're complying with the rules. And the rules, like on the spending test, was try to get a bargain if you can get it. Try to get things that could be useful in your craft that Links, as part of their task, does not normally provide you with. And not to get the things that we already had routine programs set up for getting, and not to get things for yourself. These were all guidelines. And
work with a check partner.
Yeah, work with a check partner and so forth. And then, but as far as the economics of it are concerned, that's the end of it.
You know, what you should think would be that we're so happy that we can do a task like this. In other words, the tasks aren't given to you unless you're capable of doing them, and doing them to the degree that you're supposed to do them. And I'm sorry that you failed. Most of you failed as far as check partner goes. And but we'll see how you turn out on the other 50% when we open your presents on Christmas Eve. But
it doesn't mean you failed completely. You didn't do the check partner task the way it should have been done, or the majority seem to have not done check partner aspect of the task the way they should have done it.
And even still, we don't grade you. You know that, and only the next level knows on an individual basis how far you did go on your grading. And when I said you failed half of this, where I'm sitting and looking at it, the check partner thing didn't go off as well as I would like for it to, but then I'm not the one to grade you. We're just here to teach you how to handle circumstances. But I know for one thing that I would hate to have some of you as my check partners. So what you want to do, and I'm not trying to put you down, what I want to do is make you mad enough that you say, by gum, I'm going to teach you to a T that I can be a good check partner. Now that's how a member at the next level would respond. And not say, golly, T doesn't want me to be a check partner. I knew I wouldn't be a good one. You know, that kind of reaction would be bad. But what I want you to do is to become a good check partner for T and for Doe. And the only way you can do it is by trying to be one, but not take the negative side of it and say, well, if T wouldn't want me, I guess I'll never be any good to anybody. You know, however you want to say it. So get a strong backbone and really be determined to be a check partner. And when a task is given to you again, if it's given to you in this way or another way, you show the next level that you know how to be a check partner. Remember, you're not sitting here doing just one task. You're preparing to do a task similar to what we're doing now. And we have told you where we would be if we did not have our check partner. And we're not kidding you. We're not just saying this to you to make you become a good check partner. We're telling you the truth as much as what we feel. And you've got to be aware. If you learn nothing, we'd like for you to learn how to be a check partner.
You know, when we do things separately, like let's take the caroling task that I've been working on with, and a time or two we've done some little tasks separately, or we'll go one direction in the store, another direction, as long as we have our strategy worked out. But then we have to take the time to relate every tiny incident to each other, and we're absolutely compelled to.
I know who
we're not. He knows every moment that happens here when I come to work with you, and when we go anywhere else, we know every moment. We know everything that the other one saw, every response they had, everything. And we're not. There's something in us that feels unsatisfied if it hasn't shared every iota of it with the check partner. And then, because only then, like if I'm doing something separately, only then do I feel like I can utilize my check partner, as if the check partner knows all the facts, and then I hear the response of the check partner to the facts. Then I know how to move further should I have to do more of that task separately. And this is how it works on check partners. If you have to do a period of an experience away from the check partner, you let the check partner know everything that they could know prior to its beginning, and everything that occurred that they could not have known after it was over.
Melody?
Kind of, twice I've heard one or the other you mention about doing something earlier on Christmas Eve, and at my Alcott task, that's a regular work day, unless you take vacation. I'm wondering if I should try and arrange to take it off or something.
No, we're talking about in the evening.
No.
Talk about after people get off. You're getting off the regular time or early or regular time?
I don't.
What day of the week is Christmas Eve?
Monday. I bet you'll get off early. Usually, but we're talking about in the evening.
Yeah.
If it's a work day, we always have meetings in the evenings on work days. Right?
Mm-hmm. No, the
And if everybody was
I've got
here.
past folks won't miss in the evening.
Oh, no. We won't open your presents.
No, you mentioned about not being concerned about the economics. You were buying this, and I guess I had a question about the other side of the coin, because I still have a question as to whether I did right. I was very happy about the thing that I got in the morning, and that I had only spent maybe half of the funds. And when I got back, I kind of sensed that some people were feeling that they were supposed to spend more of it,
Well, if I'd only spent half my funds, I'd got something else.
Okay.
You betcha.
But we also
We didn't tell you were limited to one thing.
Well, I didn't feel that, but I really didn't have
anything else.
anything else in mind.
Oh, I could have thought it.
Well, that's the thing. I could have thought of some things, but I thought, well, I can think of some things that I might be able to get, but is that the way I'm supposed to do this?
Well,
Go
let's
back
say,
down just to get
well, we gave you $50, and if you spent $43, I wouldn't say that you're obligated to go find something for $7.
Mhm.
But if you spent 23 or 25, I sure would go for something else that would bring me closer to the allotment. We weren't trying to get you to spend every penny, but we weren't trying to see if you could come up with something neat for a third of the or half of the allotment either. Know what I'm saying?
I felt a little guilty because I did spend every penny.
Well, we'll wait and see when we open it. Did you get a bargain? Is it something we could use? Well,
Well, we didn't say, don't you spend $50. Here's
No.
$50, and don't you spend it.
The very trick part is want to examine how I'm handling this vehicle, because there's some of my classmates that I feel like the vehicle or something is very reluctant to express its feelings with. And most of the time I push through and was forced to do it. That's what I would think would be right. And then there's other times where I pause too long and I'm having to go out of my mind or something. Until I'm in hot water or off the track or
You're in hot water?
Right, that's what the result if I pause too long
or don't push through.
I don't push through, and I'm not sure exactly why that happens.
It's just a kink in the vehicle. It's just a malfunction of the vehicle that tries to screw you up by getting you too hesitant or too reticent with certain individuals, and or not saying everything, or not pushing through and getting the facts all out. And knowing that it's a handicap of the vehicle, just override it. Just make it do it. Simply make it do it.
What could the other person do to you?
Well, let me bring up an instance where this might not be exactly what I'm talking about. Like, for instance, I was feeling that after this last meeting that when we went to movie tab, you might be right to go to the VC by yourself in a movie. And so I brought that up to a few people, but maybe it was an inappropriate time, I can see that. But it expressed to me that it was okay. And it was still on my mind, and I was going to write a note, so I was going to take this time to, if it's possible, too, with this first time.
Well, you did what was right. You brought it up. And if the others buck you, then there's nothing you can do about it. But if I feel like you were right. After the last meeting, it happened afterwards.
Right. Well, first of all,
Unless you were with girls, the female vehicle.
yeah, and let's talk about the such a thing as that, because first of all, if you're going to go to the movie test, you ought to check yourself. You ought to know your vehicle well enough when you approach the movie to know whether or not you might need to go to BC prior to going in, and try to quickly go in then, rather than having to go in and leave during the film. And for the most part, you ought to be able to do that. All of you ought to be able to tune into your vehicle enough to know whether or not you need to go before you go in and sit down. And I don't know what T says, but I think T was implying the same thing, that I would ask a check partner to go with me. It's just, I don't know, it's something that, like T said, of course, the female vehicle wouldn't go in the door with you. And I don't even know that the male vehicle needs to go in the door with you. But he would go to the BC and stand, if he doesn't need to go to the BC, at least stand in the area of the BC and greet you when you come out, and then you go on about your business. But because it's just the way we work at everything, no matter what it is.
You know, if two friends are going to the show together, and they're both males, and if one goes to BC, the other usually goes with them, even if they might just stand out. At least that's the way it is with females. They'll stand and wait for them to come out of the little cubicle. And I don't see anything, in my mind, it's safer to have a check partner with you. Whether or not you go in.
You don't ever know what you can encounter this day and time with humans, particularly with drug abuse and all the way it is. You just don't know what you would encounter, and you cover your bets by going by the rules.
It's kind of a protection. It's like you care about this person, and you want to make sure that they're going to be okay when you go with them. And it isn't that you're going to spy on them, see what they do. That's not a check partner. That's not what we're talking about. I feel very protective of Doe, and I think he feels the same way about me. In other words, and we feel very protective about you all. In other words, we want to make sure that nothing happens to you. And this is why we warn you so much. When Doe comes over here to practice, I feel it's very difficult for me to accept it. But not accept it, but to be relaxed. Because I feel like the both of us together can protect each other. But separated, it weakens our power, so to speak. But I know it's right, and so I have learned to relax. I don't get much work done while he's over here. But I get a little bit of work done. But I think it's helping, it's getting better each time. And this is the way you all should feel about each other. You should be as concerned when somebody is out on a task or out in the car and be happy when they come back and feel it inside. Because, they've accomplished what they went to do, and they came back all in one piece.
Funny thing is, we received instruction to do this thing separately. Like you could say, well, why doesn't T come over and sit on the stew with Doe, or sing with the bassist, or something, or sit on the side and with a switch and say, you're off key. And T could certainly come over and lend ideas and support and help in all kinds of ways. But we received instruction to do it this way, and it was a real adjustment for both of us to do it, and we're learning some things by it. And it's a pretty challenging task to do it that way. Somebody?
I wonder if I shouldn't have written a note about Nagodi when she was going to her task at night. I was really worried about her because she was driving, and when I find out that she was going, or she had already gone, or if she got up in the night and I get up and find she was gone, I was a little worried about it, and I probably should have written a note about that.
Well, that's been corrected.
Right.
You know,
But I
they
mean,
do.
before that time, I didn't.
Well, we knew that she was doing it. I mean, but see, since that happened, we've heard about these police officers attacking females in their vehicles, and so we don't feel like it's wise, especially now, for Nevoti to be by herself.
We felt like we had instruction for her to do it for that period of time by herself. And now that instruction has changed.
And it always corrects itself.
Okay.
Dorothy?
Back to the BCs and movie pass. I don't know if this is right, but it occurred to me about every time we've gone, I've wondered why we even do that. I mean, if we think about it ahead and go here and know that we're only 10 minutes or 15 minutes away, why choose to go to a...
Well, if you go from here to the movie and you're not going anywhere else, I don't know why anybody would ever need to go to BC. Because it'd be part of my routine to go whether I needed to or not. You know, here before time to go.
I agree with you.
Yes.
Those BCs are always so icky. And speak to the high heavens. It's always some literature written on the walls, you know. Can't read it. You know.
Well, it made me realize another little aspect. I think this particular time I was the last one to go through giving my ticket to the ticket taker, which takes a while for all 8 of us. And now that I think back, by the time I got through and Annie Odie was right in front of me, everyone else had pretty much disappeared into different areas. And I missed what Coyote was talking about as questioning. I think some had gone into BCs and some had started into the theater. There was a couple others that were still inside. And
Do you all sit together?
Yeah, we all sat together, but there was that moment which I think has happened
We got
before
separated.
because of the ticket taking.
Well, see, the ones in front have to keep an eye back to see that the trail of the line is staying with you and just stay back until the ones that are being forced to go slower catch up with you. You have to do it that way. Jan Odie?
Well, but another thing is a question is the way we handle it, because I usually buy the tickets and then she gives me a strip of tickets and I hand them off to the ticket man and, you know, he folds them up and rips it and we all walk through, but should we be doing it separately or?
Well, I don't know why, you hand them all 8 of them? Or
She only has 5.
5? Well, I don't know why you don't tear them in 2, 2 and 1 or something like that, or 2 and 3 or something.
I don't know.
It's just as easy. It doesn't matter, but I don't know why you would, because it seems to me it would delay a little bit, his counting out the 5 people, or if it was 8 something.
And the fact that it looked like one person was treating everybody too, which made that look too good.
Yeah, I don't know why you don't break them into a couple of batches.
Well, I guess we cover all our bets here. What we did yesterday was when we went to the movie task, I was driving, and we pulled up in front of the movie house, and the parking lot was off to the right. So some of us got out of the car and stood in line, and 3 of us, there was originally 2, but nobody felt to stay in the car, and we went and parked the car, and then we came back and met the rest of them.
How many got out?
5.
How many got out first?
5.
And 3 stayed in the car?
Yes. Then we went and parked the car, and then we met them in
You
line.
waited in line.
They waited in line, and we parked the car and met them.
Was the line long?
Well, it was longer than we're used to.
Where were they when you came up?
Where were they? They were in line.
No, I mean after parking the car.
They were standing in line.
Oh, they were still in line
Yes.
after
Okay,
parking the
I
car.
think under those circumstances, when there's a line, that there's nothing wrong with some waiting in line while the others
No.
go park the car.
Or how about if it's raining and drops them off, go park the car and
Well, if
co-pilot
there are
comes
2
back.
people.
As long as the pilot and co-pilot can bring the car back, sure.
Okay.
Nothing wrong with that. Because if you can get in the parking lot, you know, if you're still within that same area, you're not having to leave that area.
Uh-huh.
But as long as there are two people in the car. Now, if it isn't raining, I don't know why not let two people out to get in line,
Well, okay.
and the rest of you walk up. If it's raining, then two stay in the car, and the rest get out.
Okay.
Would work just the opposite.
Well, this brings up a situation that happens to Giodi and a check partner and myself when we go to the eye doctors. And the parking place, we use Livodi's Pass to park with, and it's a ways away. And so in order that the pilot have a check partner, they've been letting me out in front, and I walk to the door, which to me seemed the most right thing to do for the pilot to have a check partner other than me. And usually by the time I get to the door, they've parked and caught up with me. It's a matter of, maybe 20 feet? But maybe we're not handling that the most right way.
I don't think there's anything.
Sounds okay to me.
Okay.
Feel Lenny?
Regarding check partners, since using a check partner is way the next level, and we put out so much effort, we've had so many lessons on not using check partners, it seems obvious that these vehicles we're using in our streams, it's a totally different way of thinking. They do not know how to use check partners, and are we, as part of our task, trying to teach the humans how to use check partners?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
This brings up then another question I have. As my task, I don't know if I'm applying this right, but I'm responsible for a crew, and sometimes individuals work better together, sometimes I encourage it, and other times it's felt right to me to say the opposite, say, look, no, I'd rather that you two didn't work together, because sometimes humans just waste time. Now, what is it, can I apply this?
Well, you're going to have to find out, since you're dealing with humans like that, you're going to have to try to find out which ones can work better with which ones. And if some have not learned to work with anyone, then you still ought to try to, once in a while, to find out who can be the most effective improvement of that one's task by putting him with, like if he's lazy, put him with someone who isn't. If he's inclined to talk too much, put him with someone who's annoyed at talking, or whatever it is, so that they keep their eye more on the task. And can't you all see that a person's judgment of everything they do, that means even how they're going to apply the screw to a tool, their judgment of everything they do is just an end product of the composite of experiences that mind has had and that vehicle has had. And it differs so totally from the composite of every other vehicle around. So always, if you're putting two together that can utilize each other's composites, then the end result has to improve over what it would be with one. You can take a person with a PhD and put him with someone who's never finished the first grade, and still the end result is 100% better, because they have both had a completely different set of entries into their computer by experiences and the experiences of the mind on how to approach something. And a lot of times the more intellectual one has gotten all kinds of phobias and kinks and psychological hurdles that get in the way because of pressures. So it's always going to work better if 2 or 3 people can do things together, if they want to work together, if they're more interested in the end product than they are in getting off the track and just goofing off together. Do you see what we're saying? And you've got to remind them of the end product. How many times have we had to remind you of the end product on any task that it is that you're doing? Now, but we still say that it's the way you perform that is more important. But we're talking about when you're performing right, that the end product can't help but be a good product. But you can't have good performance or good attitude between yourself and not get anything done either. That doesn't work either. So it has to be both. But one of the best things you're going to set this society up for is relationships not based upon physical attraction. And that's partnerships. That is working with individuals who they learn that they can learn from. Now, if you go and find someone to work with that's like a clone of you, there's hardly any basis for learning. I mean, if they've gone through pretty much the same pattern of development, they were raised in the same kind of neighborhood, they were Catholics, they went to private school, they had 3 sisters, everything was pretty much the same. There's not nearly the development in that kind of relationship with someone to work with as there is where the experience has been very different, and they could learn so much from each other. When the Next Level sent us to do this task with you, the Next Level asked T's Mind to prepare that vehicle in its phase of the task in one way, a very, very defined way, and gave instruction for me to prepare this vehicle in another way, a very defined way. They were complete opposites. Because the necessity of the task, they were complete opposites. It was the way the vehicles were supposed to be prepared because of the task that had to follow. Now, and then when we had to start working together as partnerships, getting to a relationship where we could work together was very awkward at first. But then when we began to get past the hurdles, our heads just would spin from what we were learning from each other in the process of vehicles that had been put through totally different types of nurturing. And this is the way that humans are going to look at what they can learn from experiences like that. Instead of seeking out someone that's just similar, someone that's just like them, that they can't really learn anything from, they can just laugh together a lot, or look in the mirror at each other. Mr. Rudy?
I don't know if this ties in with that or not, but the question that keeps coming back to me is, think back over known civilization, what you read in the Bible and whatnot. There's always been like a little group of minds at each period when an older member would come down that was always there, like whether it's the Levites in Moses' time or the 40 prophets in Elijah's time or the 70 or so in Jesus' time or us at this time.
The what in Jesus?
70 or so.
Or 40 or whatever it was. And I wonder if those minds were they doing the same sort of thing that we're doing? Was there another mind in those vehicles as well as the class going on, and that group keeps being carried on?
Now, wait a minute. I don't know where you
What
got.
are the 70s?
Oh, he's talking about the fact that some of the religious groups say that there were 70 at one time that were close disciples, not apostles, but close disciples. You've never gotten that from Link. So you're listening to things Link has never given. Link has never suggested that any of those groups had minds from the Next Level doing anything other than apostles.
Okay.
We have never suggested any of that other. Now, it doesn't say we know the exact number of those that worked with Jesus in his task, because we don't know the exact number.
See, I believe, I don't believe, I know that this is a different circumstance. You've got to remember that every time a group is taken, a garden is taken up to a different level, it doesn't happen the same way. The next time somebody comes in, it won't be done in the same way as this. Every time something has happened, it's been an experiment.
Right.
In other words, they don't have a book that says, well, this is what we've done on this other garden, and we come here and do it the same way on this garden. It isn't done that way. This is why we couldn't, when we first started this, we thought, oh, it'd be within a matter of months, you know. And then what happened? We were given something else to do. And now I'm beginning to think we don't want to do a good job anymore, you know, because we might not ever get out of here, you know. But I'm just joking. But the point I'm getting at is that they are experimenting. They are seeing what we can do, and we still want to do it to the best of our ability, because we are saving somebody else a task by doing this, doing a good job here.
The more
Can you
we can do,
understand this?
the more we can do.
In other words, they may not have to send somebody else. We may be doing 10 jobs
Right.
right now, where they might have to,
The more we can do, the less someone else is going to have to do. That's all it
and we
amounts
may
to.
be knocking somebody else out of a task for the next level, or coming to do it, doing a task. But they don't care if they're knocked out, because they're not working on merit badges or something like that.
Commission.
But this is why you should be very, very happy to do this task, even though it's miserable at times, because you are doing a next level task. You are doing a task that the chief has commissioned you to do, and you shouldn't take it lightly. Now, we can talk to you now. You have more mind in, and more mind in now than you ever have since we've been on this task. And you should never listen to your vehicle very long. You shouldn't listen to it at all, but we know it's not possible right now to stop it. But you shouldn't listen to it any longer than you have to in a negative way. In other words, you should flip-flop it as quickly as you can to a positive, even though your vehicle feels like it's a strong negative. But you need to bring it quickly to a positive. And remind your vehicle that it is your servant, and it has to do as you demand it to do, or command it to do. And it's just something that we have to do. And the sooner we do it, the sooner we accomplish what we have to do, the faster we'll get out of here. But just don't ever forget that you're working for the next level.
Well, I want to say that those questions, I don't know where those questions came from, because we have never suggested that we had any knowledge of Levites being from the next level, working.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
What I was talking about, I was trying to understand something you said, Terry, I thought again, I was trying to know what it was, about opposites and the next level, how check partners work. And I was thinking, well, it seems like there's been a little group all along, whether it's ones that happen to be closer to members of the next level, little minds that grew maybe a little faster, or...
Well, see, but you're relating it wrong, Cerroti. The only group we've ever talked about that, to any knowledge, we might be permitted to share with you is our suspicion that some who were with Jesus were members of the next level and assisting on a task of that sort. The others, we feel like that you're talking about who were working with the next level, like close associates with Moses or Elijah or any of those, we feel like we're just the same thing like where the cream of the crop was at the time, that they were there working with the cream of the crop. It's just like you're now working where the cream of the crop is. In the nation, where the cream of the crop. Cream of the crop meaning those who are developing in a more accelerated pattern. This doesn't mean that the cream of the crop is all good, but it does mean that it is the more accelerated crop. But the accelerated does not mean good necessarily. Now, don't you know that the closer you get to the butter, the more milk there is? that isn't butter. And it's the same way in anything else that's getting closer and closer to moving up a step.
I may be outside bubble and drop it.
Just don't even consider it.
But the question I was wondering about was, does that like I'm still trying to get a clear picture of what we're doing. What happens to these mines when we leave? What is their function? Rather than like I can see
Your mines of the vehicle?
right. I can see all kinds of little things that can be happening with this experiment, and trying to correlate that to what's been happening, because I would think that there's leaders
No,
things up.
let me interrupt you, okay? Because I think you're wasting your time. You don't need to really delve into it. But look at it in this way. There's a scripture in the Bible, and I'm not even sure I have it right, but they talk about putting a little bit of leaven in a bushel of flour, using it as a little bit of heaven in a bushel of flour. I mean, in just a touch here, and before long, it all becomes leavened. I don't know if that's what the scripture says, but that's what it means, okay? Now, it only takes a tiny touch of heaven, means next level, to do an awful lot on this garden. And now you take 35 vehicles sitting here with a touch of heaven in their minds, their brains, or the vehicles, and in the genetic structure and so on. And just think what that can do over a period of time. Do you understand that? In other words, it may not happen immediately. Let's use this for sake of explanation, because we really don't know how it works, okay? But let's say that each gene is put in to the strain that you are responsible for. What's in let's say what you have been programming into that vehicle. It is into that strain of that vehicle. I mean, the strain that you're working on, okay?
The mind strain.
The mind strain. The task that you have, okay? Now, let's say it goes into a pot. Now, it doesn't really, okay? Because I'm only trying to express it in the best way that I know how, and I'm not even sure I can do it. But if you can step in, that would be greatly appreciated.
Well, I can tell you what the thought I had.
Oh, okay.
But I don't want to.
No.
It's not to you guys.
I'll stop this.
Well, let's take. This is just a game we're playing, okay? Because we're not saying this is the way it's going to happen, because we don't know. But let's take the mines that are in 35 vehicles here, and you all leave, and let's picture those mines have been pushed to make those parts of the program surface. Okay? But let's say when the mine enters the vehicle and the vehicle has the capacity to accept the program, it doesn't mean, now don't forget, it doesn't mean that the vehicle then was an offspring that had all that programming. It doesn't mean that at all. But it means that when the mind enters that vehicle, like maybe that vehicle, had that mind not entered it, had 2,000 or 500,000 potential programs. Or what do you call something's not different aspects of information? Huh? Well, I don't know. What would you call it in computer language?
Categories.
Well, different aspects of information. Well, we don't need to hunt for titles, as long as you know what we're talking about. Okay, let's say that that vehicle had all those holes there because it had that facility. But the mind that your mind going into that vehicle is going to all but saturate those holes. it'll almost fill them. Probably not. But it'll fill many times more than any other mind would have filled in that vehicle. And then as those begin to, as keys begin to be punched by things that would awaken the mind, experiences awakening the mind, then those programs will come through. Now each time those programs come through, they also turn around and go in and add programs to the vehicle. So that the program then, the vehicle then is going to, if it has an offspring, it's also going to have a great deal more potential, just potential, than the offsprings prior to that mind having occupied that vehicle would have had. So you see, now what happens 3 generations down the line, just for example. Let's say that Liv-Odie's mind entered a vehicle, awakened rather slowly, had 3 children in the process, began to awaken, then more it began to awaken, it knew that this wasn't what it was supposed to be doing, and it began to know more and more knowledge. Then, now think of those grandchildren, of what they're going to know. Can you follow that? Because those grandchildren, now the vehicles on the one side are being affected with considerable more potential. Plus the mind, I'm talking about grandchildren more in terms of where the mind goes instead of the tree. But the tree itself is being nurtured. If you can see it, it's growing in both directions, the mind and the tree. You're improving the plant 1,000-fold, and you're upgrading minds 1,000-fold. 1,000 is probably not even good enough term. Now that's about as close as I don't know if you understood what I was saying, but because it's hard to get that picture out. But I can see just unlimited asset. It's like when the T said the longer we stay, the more next level tasks can be accomplished in the nurturing of the garden. And when you see the consciousness that we have reached at the time we go, will be the program that will be left in that mind. The program that will be left in that mind. Now, when that mind awakens a vehicle, let's say that Liv-Odie's second child, Liv-Odie was Liv-Odie's mind, not Liv-Odie's mind, but the vehicle, the mind in Liv-Odie now, when that mind, the mind of her vehicle, when it takes another vehicle, let's say it's very slow to awaken. Very slow to awaken. And in the process, in other words, doesn't have offspring until late. Think of what those offspring have in it. You follow that? Because even that's being affected in a different way. Because certain aspects of that knowledge is coming in, but not the aspect of not having offspring. But all that knowledge is coming in and creating in just the houses, the vehicles, of the plants, it's making them extremely more advanced. Now, all we're really, now remind yourself that all that the next level is really trying to do is to see how fast it can get the human kingdom to accelerate to the point of becoming beginners in the next level. And to have the technical knowledge, the behavioral knowledge, to let all the facilities that the next level can bring in to make them qualify to be beginners, legitimate beginners. Can you follow that? And it's going to be just phenomenal to watch the plants that are a result of your presence here. Melody?
Am I right in thinking that offspring will also mean those that the mind comes in contact with who are maybe genetically related, but
the influence there, absolutely. That's why it goes in so many directions. It's like the mind of your vehicle, when it takes another vehicle And while it's a philosophical student in some university, and it's reading these topics that are touching its head off, it's going to be seen as a way out, far out thinker. But it's also, the people are going to say, oh, that makes sense. That makes sense. And then everybody that listens to that mind and it registers with are going to look at all the people they're going to influence because they're buying it. You see, so it goes in all directions at once. It's not only the experiential strain, and it's not only the improvement of the vehicle, it's also equally the influence that the two together make as they express themselves and others listen.
When he was talking about us, these minds, and the minds of these vehicles possibly being leavened, it made me think of, like I've been fascinated and kind of puzzled for a long time about the whole idea of the Jewish nation as being the chosen people of God, whether that was an understanding that they had, that they were an experiment that was getting a lot of attention for the sake of being leavened, some kind of leaven for the planet. I didn't know whether that was right or not, but they got so much...
I think it's highly elevated there.
Well, they were.
It was just the
in
beginning.
Moses' time, yeah.
It was just like taking a corner of the garden and planting a little garden and then having it spread out toward other areas. And they concentrated on that particular little tribe. And because of the characteristics that the tribe had, which was they wanted, evidently they must have looked to God more than the others. So they chose that particular tribe to be the ones to try to grow and develop.
That was like an experiment with that.
Sure. But for them to hang on to that idea is just superstition.
They're no longer that way.
Had they been the chosen people of the Lord today, they would have never thought of going and shoving people off their land in order to create or try to recreate an old history, and in the process disturb a present history. They would have never done that. They would have said, let's make the world Israel. Let's make the world Israel. Now, your being here, this experiment is not for the American. It's not for. It's for the melting pot. This happens to be the melting pot.
This
now,
is the favored male.
yes,
This is
but
where
it doesn't mean that it's Caucasians who were all natives of the U.S. You know, it means that wherever the melting pot was right now, and we've told you how many reasons that the Next Level chose that we be here. It's the only place we could do it. In fact, the Next Level had to prepare this place very hard for us to be able to do what we're doing. It certainly couldn't have been done anywhere else.
See, that's way back.
One thing that tickled me when I was reading the source, and it was talking about how I guess it was the rabbis would get together and they would receive an instruction, and then they'd spend all this time trying to figure out how that instruction applied to this particular circumstance. And I thought, I had a flash of Stat 3 for a minute, get an instruction, trying to figure out, well, how did that apply to this specific thing? I just wondered if somewhere along the line that kind of programming to try and apply that could be carried on even as far as some of the...
The source isn't a true story.
No, but it's based on, you know, the actual...
Well, it makes you feel like it's true, right? But you don't know.
But it was the programming that fascinated me, and how they, if they spent that much time trying to get down to how to apply the law that was given to them, then it almost seemed to parallel to what we try and do in applying procedures, and I could see how that could be good programming for a vehicle that, you know, that someone might have to use later on.
Well, if you all have read the Old Testament, if you go back and look at it again, you can see a lot of characteristics of the Next Level. And the way, from the very beginning, when the Lord, when they called the Lord, gave them instructions on just about everything. And what do you all have? You know, it's just like we had to set up a circumstance, just like you would have in the next level. However, when you are free of these vehicles and you go to the next level, you will know all these things automatically. You don't have to have it. But we had to set it up in this way at the very beginning to, like we said many times before, we had to prepare a place for your next level mind to be able to come into. In other words, the vibrations have to be a certain way. If you have a lot of irritation or a lot of negativism or bad vibrations, as we call it, if you have that a lot, your next level mind will not come in. It's almost like oh no, you can't get me in that mess, you know. And it does have the freedom to do that. But then the next level mind, you can say, well, the next level mind, you would think that it knows its task, and it will come in and do the task anyway if the vibrations are bad, and try to do something about it. But what's so strange, if you do let your next level mind come in that way, then the bad vibrations will go away. Can you see that? So, but your next level mind will push back until it gains strength. And I can't believe there's a single person sitting here right now who has a negative response, who does not suffer after they have a negative response. Anybody want to raise their hand? I don't believe it. And that is because your next level mind has already begun to program your vehicle and get it under control. But what you want to do is keep your next level mind in better control so you never have a negative response. That's what you're striving for. But you are, like we said earlier, you have more mind in now than ever before. And it's almost ridiculous for you to have any kind of characteristic that the human vehicle has as far as responses and attitudes and things like that. In other words, you can look at yourself and almost laugh at your vehicle for responding that way, if you can understand what I'm saying. Simply because it's almost like like Plato, tearing up the wallpaper. We don't give a hang about the wallpaper, and we could say, oh, isn't that cute, you know. He has so much sense he can go tear up the wallpaper. Put him to work. Turn the wallpaper off the wall. You know, we can look at it in that way. But we also, we didn't get mad at Plato. But what did we do? We protected the wallpaper and moved him away from the wallpaper. And in a sense, you can look at your vehicle responding in a bad way and say, oh, well, he's still doing something like that, you know, but what can I do to protect myself from doing it again?
Get it away from
the wallpaper. You see what I'm saying? So this is how you look at those circumstances that happen. Don't bring on bad vibrations again by feeling badly about how you responded, because all you're doing is doubling it. And if you treat it as though, well, I want to get away, I want to be prepared for a circumstance like that and know that I can respond in that way, therefore I want to protect myself and see that it doesn't happen again. Stay away from the wallpaper. Now this gets back to where we started with Sunodi, so to speak, in the question she asked. It's preparing yourself for all kinds of circumstances. And whatever you do, don't allow, if you find yourself in an adverse circumstance, immediately when you become aware of it, try to correct it as soon as you possibly can. Which means when you become aware of it, do it right then. And never say to the person, let's say you're working on something as a check partner, and you notice a bad response in your partner. Never say, I wonder what's wrong with him or her. Say, I wonder if I am doing something. And if that bad response continues, then the second time a bad response occurs, if it's happening, if you're doing several tasks, then say to that person, am I doing something that is causing you to be uncomfortable? Or am I doing something wrong? Because if I am, I want to know. And sincerely say it. Because you do want to know why they're having an adverse reaction. And if they say to you, oh no, it's not you, it's me, then say, well, can I help you in any way? Because it's obvious that person is letting you know that they're having a bad time because of some reason. Can you follow that? If it's just with that individual that's having the bad response.
You know, T, what we used to go through at times, if one was disturbed, the other one would say, what did I do to cause that? And then the other one would say, well, it wasn't anything you did, it was me. But the person who asked would still say, well, I still want to know what it was that you took wrong, because I want to try to not stimulate that poor response. Again, I want to see if I can't eliminate the thing that is touching it off. Do you follow what we're saying? You know, an interesting thing, and this shows you how primitive your vehicles are, because their brains don't know how to think this way. It's brand new to them. You're invading houses of the brain that have not known how to function, have not been called upon to function before. It's just like a moment ago talking, I said, Levoti's mind, and I said, oh, no, not Levoti, the mind of the vehicle that Levoti is occupying, and you go on and you talk about that, and you talk about that mind entering other vehicles, and then how the offspring, the vehicles plus the offspring, the experiential strain, and the brain is just reeling because the brain doesn't. You're putting pockets in the brain that have never functioned. Now, those pockets, a few generations down, those will be functioning pockets. But they don't function now because we've got primitive vehicles. Now, you have caused your brain to accelerate in their function tremendously. Now, in the process of doing it, you've also almost cut off, short-circuited some of the lower nature brain functions. You know, some of the simplistic things, because you've got your next level mind concentrating in the brain on things that are more complicated. So that a lot of the things that the brain could easily, under normal circumstances, learn to do automatically, it can't function at both in both quarters very well at the same time. So you have to teach even those simplistic things. You have to walk it through them and talk it through them and to make it do it, because it's not used to functioning that way. And as we were just talking to you about this last aspect, the brain isn't ready to receive all that. Under normal circumstances, it's just not ready to receive it. And it's one thing for you to be able to sit and think about it. And you can force the brain to open those little pockets, and you can think about it fairly clearly. But then you try to make the brain express it. And the brain hasn't learned how to do that. It's like, now, wait a minute. It was enough for me to think about it. But I can't express it.
But you know how you can make it do it, don't you? Do you? Yeah. That's right. Programming it.
Listen to the tape
Through
and
repetition.
exercising it through repetition. It's just like when we said this little routine of when you notice if I do something or no, Arthody and I are working together, and I see a poor response, and I think, oh goodness, what did I do to bring out that poor response? And so I say, goodness, I really want to know if I did something. And Arthody then gets control real quickly. He says, it's nothing you did. It's just within me. And I say, but, well, I appreciate that that's the way you want to look at it. But what was it? Can you tell me what it was? Now, here comes the test. Can I control my vehicle? If he tells me. Now, 'Cause I want to know. I want to know. I'm dead serious. I'm dead serious. Because I know when T and I first started awakening that I would mean it when I said it. But when I heard it, I didn't like it. Now, I'm telling you the gospel. But that becomes completely controllable. So that when you hear it, you still have the reins on it, and you're glad you heard it. And then you get some ideas on how to prevent being the instrument of touching someone else off when their vehicle may not be under control. Now, I don't want to be so free that I can act however I want to act in order to blame you for your poor responses. Do you follow that? I don't want to be that free. Can you see that? I want to be so sensitive to you that while I do what I think is right, I want to also see if I can't inhibit anything that could cause you trouble, that could trigger anything in what you're dealing with in the control of your own vehicle. And that's the kind of sensitivity you should have toward one another. Now, that's really helping people. It doesn't help them to say, or to think, well, it's clear you didn't have control of your vehicle, you wouldn't have had such a poor response to me. Do you see what I'm saying? That's a very poor response in itself. That's a very human response.
That's not teaching the new.
But the real thing is when you recognize that something is wrong, you want to correct it. And so you say, is there something that I can do? And they say, well, it's only when you said so-and-so. And then you have control. And you hear that and say, okay, now I've got an idea of how I can not say it that way or not say it in a way that could cause you to be able to take it in that way. I want to learn how I can say it. Now, you can't say to them, well, I didn't mean it that way. You just took it wrong. You see? That's doing nobody any favors. You're saying, I've gotten smart here. I've learned that their vehicle doesn't know under those circumstances where I'm coming from if I say something in a certain way. So I'm going to learn to say it differently. I'm going to do my part of helping them not have to deal with their vehicle. They've got enough to deal with their vehicle without my having to add to it. Can you understand that? And this is the way a member at next level thinks on a task like yours when you've got a primitive
These
vehicle.
are the thoughts that you have to make available for the future. Cody?
Well, you know, when you're trying to dig a hole and the earth is really hard, if you pour a little water on it, let it sit for a while and soften it up, it's a lot easier to dig. And I was wondering, in that same way, does the frequency soften up the brain, soften up the vehicle's brain to where it can then accept more mind? In other words, you can't actually get additional mind in without the frequency doing a job on your head first?
No, the frequency upsets it. The frequency surfaces the poison that is in the way of softening the soil. In other words, the frequency usually brings out the barrier, usually brings out the poison that is inhibiting the deeper response, the better response.
Does it mean like it cleans out the pockets then that would then house more mind?
Well, yes, but it's the effort that you put out, not letting that poison manifest itself, that softens the soil, to use your illustration. Can you follow that? Okay. When we're giving you a lesson, whether it's individually or in a meeting, and let's call that that we're having some help and the frequency is being given to you. If you're really thirsty for that frequency and you're receiving it, it will surface some membranes that are inhibitors for you. It will surface some poison. And your vehicle will want to respond negatively to that. And the effort that you put out not permitting that poor response opens those membranes. That's always the way it happens. Now, if you have a poor response and then regret it and then try to recoup, it doesn't work. Do you know what we're saying? It's when you feel that poor response, even mental. It doesn't have to be something that comes out of your mouth. Like if we're trying to give you a lesson about something and you are even thinking in terms of poor response. Now when you sense that poor response coming, that poor thought or that poor feeling, and you turn it over and refuse to let it, and you push through and see what the positive is that's here for you, then you are deeper. More mind has come in. Your thinking is more profound. More next level mind is surfacing. But it doesn't work if you, or let's say it works only a fraction of a positive, if you let that negative or that poison surface, even though it may be in silence. You may not even show it on your face. But if you let it come into your thought and you think that negative thought, and then you regret it, and you try to gain ground you've lost, the ground gained is about like this, where it could have been like this. Okay. What I said doesn't mean that if you have slipped and had the negative thought that you shouldn't follow it through with the apology, and because at least that's better than not doing it. But a greater gain would have had if you could have flipped it over at the first sign of the negative.
But what you really need to do is observe your check partner. If you do a task without being aware of your check partner, the expression on their face, how they are working with you, then
be keener to them, more sensitive to them.
You really, when I talk,
it's not babying them. It's not babying them.
When we talk to you all, we observe your expression on your face. And if we see, or if we're talking to you on the phone and we can tell by the tone of your voice, then we try to come back with a softening to help you through that difficult time. And
sometimes we might get instructions to say something that just shocks it out of you.
And then we come back with, once you drop your teeth and you pick them up, come back in, and then we come back in a softer tone. But it always happens when we come on strong. It's always to shock you, shock your vehicle.
And we're not doing it intentionally. At that moment, we are just purely robots.
It's almost like it's going out and it knocks it out so that your next level mind can come in. Believe it or not, if you get, believe it or not, it's the truth. If you can get into a little rut of thinking about something, and you lose sight that you are actually in that little rut thinking in that way. And then when it's brought to Tiendo's attention, then they will say something to you that, and if your vehicle receives it as coming on pretty strong, then it is a shock to your system, and it knocks it usually out and helps your next level mind to come in enough where you can be aware that you were in a little rut and you need to correct that particular thing. It's never because Tiendo are angry or mad or upset or anything.
I want to put you down.
No, it's always for a reason. But again, I repeat, when you're working with your check partner, if it's whether you're in your lab and there are 4 or 5 of you in the lab, or there are 2 of you working, notice the expression on their faces. Be aware if you are responding in a way that is causing them, your check partner, to have trouble. And then the first time you notice it, try to do something about it. Either become softer in the way you are acting, or if you feel like it's beyond that kind of thing, then quickly say to them, I'm sorry, I have caused, don't say I have caused you to be upset, because that will cause them to be more upset. But say to them, I'm sorry I've been acting this way. Let me let me start over.
Yeah, because if you said, I'm sorry, I said the thing that upsets you,
Right.
see, that throws the ball back
That
at them.
would be the worst thing. Say, Marty, did you want to?
I was thinking today about, I realized in the lab, several times, my partner and I would be talking about a thing, and I realized that we were both saying something in different words, and it wasn't, we weren't understanding one another.
Saying the same thing?
Yeah.
But different words?
But it just seemed like it was, but I realized at the time, because I don't know what happened, but I had been really asked to know how to handle things with my partner and know how to understand where they're coming from. And now, recently, it's been happening where I realize what my partner's really saying and I'm really saying, and we've been able to straighten things out a lot easier.
Well, you know what we said earlier about how your vehicle and the mind of that vehicle was a composite that was so different from some other vehicle. And many times you'll be saying the same thing. And yet to the other one it sounds like you're saying just the opposite. And even that difference can stimulate difficulty if you let it. When there's no difference there. It's just the way it's delivered. And you don't realize that there's just a fact that you're used to expressing it one way and this other vehicle expresses it the other way. Now, the better you get to know the vehicle, if you want to know that other vehicle, the more you can see through the delivery and see what the individual is trying to say. Fortunately, none of you are held responsible for your delivery, even though we have given you the task of trying to alter your delivery. Because our delivery, nearly all of you have a delivery that upsets somebody else if they are in the frame of mind to be upset by delivery that doesn't match them. It's just like an Englishman who can't stand to hear Chinese. And you're the only one that always speaks Chinese. And whatever you say, why do you have to use Chinese? You know, nothing bothers me like Chinese. And why don't you learn to speak English? And I'm sure that you could think of that other individual. Why do they have to choose the words that they use? Anybody who uses those words, if it has to mean so-and-so, and yet it doesn't. That's only the way your vehicle computes that those words should mean that. So what Sam Otis said, that she's trying now to force and to get help and to force to be more in tune with what the other individual is trying to say instead of taking them for face value. Face value meaning her vehicle's interpretation of where they're coming from. One of the things we've got to stop is that on this other thing of the frequency surfacing poison, that only applies if there is poison to be surfaced in the area of that frequency at that time. In other words, it does not mean that every time you receive frequency there's going to be a negative response. If you're already where you need to be and your pocket is open and clean in that frequency, there won't be a negative response. But if you're at a lower vibration or that pocket isn't clean, then it'll be surfaced, and the only way to clean it out is to surface it. Do you follow that?
Now, I want to ask you all something. This Dodie isn't here, right? What happens to him when he's not sitting here receiving the frequency? Right?
Is he doing it where he is right now? Or does he have to get an intake?
Lagodi?
He gets it from the tape and listens to it.
Right. And besides, the frequency is in the room, in the
It
craft.
stays in the craft. It lingers in the craft. He will tap it both from having been left here like a thought form and as he listens to the tape.
It will activate it.
So when he comes back and listens to the tape, and then as he tries to apply that tape, he begins to use it.
That's right. And it's hanging around. His dose is left here. We left it in a little bottle. See you later.